Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Transfer News Central podcast. Although this could also be called my little project, the pilot episode of the 15 Minutes of Football podcast, which would be a show that wants to efficiently tackle some of football's biggest topics in 15 minutes or less. I'm liking the idea of that branding, but we'll go with Transfer News Central for now. Before we don't want to get into any other legal issues like Manchester City did of late. And I'm currently joined again by James. Hello, James.
Hi.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're liking the sound of the new format.
I am. I think it's good. I think it'll attract more people when you've got a focused discussion on one topic. That attracts a lot of people.
Yeah,
I listen to the football ones. That I listen to, honestly.
Absolutely.
So,
efficiently tackling the biggest topics. I think we'll go with that slogan. I'll prompt you each time. You're looking forward to it, James. Yes, efficiently tackling it's a bit like get Brexit done, but that didn't go too well. So hopefully, this one goes. No, it did not. But I want to start, of course. First topic of 15 minutes of football, which we want to tackle efficiently, is a very big one actually. Manchester City and getting off pretty much scot-free, except for £10 million. Now that sounds like a lot of money, but in the footballing world, it's peanuts. Fine for their issues with financial fair play. So essentially, the reason why City avoided their 2-season suspension from the Champions League was because the allegations were time barred. Essentially, they had broken financial fair play, but that was between 2012 and 2016. And the allegations and the apparent breaking of the rules was over 5 years old, in which case UEFA had waited too late to act, and Manchester City were able to avoid the initial 2-year ban that was put forward by UEFA. So James, we'll go to you here. There's some facts down there that are pretty, that's the general facts of it. Just one more actually, that someone tweeted me. That City have spent 1.16 billion since 2008, which is more than any other side in that time period. So I want to know what your stance on it is. I know you're probably familiar with the facts, but what's your stance on the whole situation? And we're going to come on both sides of this. There's plenty of
okay. I'll look at it. I'll go from both sides of it. From Manchester City's perspective, legally, yes, in the last 5 years, maybe they haven't broken the rules, and you could say legally they were correct to pursue the appeal. And of course, I mean the appeal's been worth pursuing because they've got let off. So from that perspective, you can understand Man City's position that I feel like this was over 5 years ago. This is beyond the margin of judgment, so therefore we shouldn't be punished for it. I know a lot of Manchester City fans seem to think that UEFA have some kind of agenda against Manchester City, and they genuinely believe that, a lot of Manchester City fans. And Pep Guardiola does nothing to kind of to discourage that either in some of his public comments. But I think in terms of a kind of moral, ethical perspective, I think having been given a 2-year ban, which you wouldn't be given unless there was significant evidence, and then getting off with a kind of fine, which, like you say, is peanuts basically in the football world, doesn't quite feel like justice to me. And especially because the implications of it could be, you don't know, they could be catastrophic. They could be, so many clubs have been done for financial fair play by UEFA, and I've already seen stories of some clubs who've been banned. They're now going to appeal because there's now a precedent.
Yeah.
So you can go. Lawyers can go. There is a precedent for overturning these cases, and it essentially means. The danger that it could mean that financial fair play is effectively irrelevant. Jose Mourinho said today in a press conference, financial fair play doesn't mean anything anymore. There's, because Manchester City just got off with breaking the rules, because they did break the rules. They got off on a technicality, and to me, like I think a fair judgment would have been a smaller fine and will ban you for a year. Because ban for a year actually probably would mean
Dispel all of the stars. Yeah,
they'd be able to keep most of their players would stay. You know, they could do 1 year out of the Champions League, and the financial cost of being out of the Champions League for 1 year is much less than 2 years, and it would be seen as a punishment. And people would say, "All right, well, we actually can't do this because we won't get away with it. You know, we have to keep to the FFP rules, because if we don't, there will be a punishment for it." And that would have, for me, that would have been the most sensible course of action. And I'm trying to say this without any kind of prejudice or bias at all. You know, because I think that would have been fair.
No, I think.
And also, I see Manchester City's position, because they say, well, we haven't done anything in the last 5 years. The judging period is 5 years. And really, to be honest, UEFA made a bit of a mess of it in how they handled it. They should have done this before. They should have done this before. It shouldn't have been, if they, like, for example, if they'd done it 2 or 3 years, if they prosecuted a year or two ago, the ban might have been upheld, you know. But they didn't handle it. They didn't handle it very well. There was a case to be made, but you know, Manchester City have got limitless finances and access to the best lawyers. And you know, I know that there's some people who think that because of the amount of money that the Far East are putting into football clubs, you know, PSG and Manchester City and all these people, there's politics involved as well. Now, I don't know that. I'm not going to make any assumptions or accusations around that. But you know, but it wouldn't, you know, it wouldn't be unrealistic to you know, given what we've seen in FIFA, to see things like that go on.
Yeah.
But I don't. But I'm not gonna dwell on that. That's not really a big issue of discussion for me. I think Man City had a case. They won the case. I see their perspective. I think the fairest position would have been give them a year and reduce the fine.
I mean, I think the thing is, I mean, I sort of trying to go on the other side. I mean, FFP is a sense in my eyes is almost you know, some kind of, it feels a bit like it feels. I mean, the idea was when it came in that it was supposed to protect football clubs, you know, and whatnot. But to an extent, I feel like it's more keeping the elite, and I do think there's a point in that. So, I mean, you know, a lot of people look at Manchester City, they target them, and they say, "Oh, they're doing this, they're doing this, they're doing that." I mean, when you've alluded to it, I mean, PSG are basically tyrants of the French league. You look at Barcelona as well, and they've managed to come up with some incredible transfer figure numbers. You know, in terms of Griezmann, 105 million, Coutinho, 140 million. His man Dembele not too long ago, 105 million. Again, I mean, they are essentially. Remember, Manchester City's record signing 62 million for Rodri. I mean, people seem to think that they are this team that goes out there and absolutely blows the football world away and causes inflation to transfers. In actual fact, it's quite the opposite. They are a team that do business efficiently. Yes, they haven't made any significant sales of late. So, you know, you can look at that and say, well, that is a bit unfair in itself. And it is. But then neither of Barcelona, neither of PSG, Real Madrid, not really. For years, they just spent ridiculous amounts of money until recently, where they've clamped down a little bit, actually, as a result of FFP. But I think, you know, I think there is a little prejudice towards Manchester City in the sense that it's new money, in the sense that it's sort of, you know, they don't have the history of Manchester United. They don't have the history of, you know, other big clubs, Barcelona, Real Madrid out there. And there is a sense that they want to be cut down because it's like they've gone to, you know, the swanky party on the 110th floor of the hotel, and they've gone in, and people are saying, "Oh, what are you doing here? You're not one of us," kind of thing. And it does, and I do think there is a bit of that in it.
There is, and I absolutely empathise with that as a, as
a Chelsea fan that also went through a similar thing.
And I remember I saw a quote from a journalist who used to work for UEFA, and pretty much said UEFA don't like Chelsea, and not to talk about Chelsea in UEFA offices because they're not liked. Because again, it's the same thing. They're seen as kind of breaking up the established order in football. So I mean, to a certain extent, there's an element of empathy between Chelsea and Manchester City fans sometimes, because and of course, especially when we got the transfer ban from UEFA as well, it was a lot of the same things were being said. Like,
well, I was having this argument really, James.
And, that kind
I
of
was
thing.
having the argument with someone actually who's a Manchester United fan, and he was saying, "Well, City broke this regulation and that regulation." I said, "Yeah, that's fair enough, but when Manchester United were under Jose Mourinho and they were taking on Guardiola's City, United went with, they went quite heavy into the transfer market. They got £89 million Paul Pogba, 75 million Romelu Lukaku. Obviously, they broke even with Lukaku, but they still paid the fee, initially 75 million. They also paid 32 million for Lindelof, 30 million for Bailly. They brought Alexis Sanchez in on ludicrously high wages. So there was a lot, they spent a heck of a lot of money with Manchester United. And the only significant sale from all of that was breaking even on Lukaku. But no one really brought that into the equation too much, because obviously United could do that because they're a bigger club with more revenue and they've got better sponsorship deals. And obviously they abided towards FFP more. But I just posed the question: what gives Manchester United the right, the unequivocal right to spend more money than the neighbours, other than the history that they have as a football club? Because I'll tell you something: in the last 10 years, Manchester United haven't had the right. 10 years is a bit much because obviously they won a few titles in the folks. Maybe we'll go 6-7 years. But in the last 6-7 years, they've declined significantly. They've not had that right to go out there and spend lavishly. They really haven't, and they have. And the reason why people aren't talking about Manchester United spending as much, simply other than the fact that they have the sponsorship deals to sort of back that up somewhat, is because they've not done anything in that period. They stagnated under Jose Mourinho. They got second, and they didn't necessarily they got a few trophies, sure, but they didn't win the league. They didn't win the Champions League, to something which that spending would suggest that they wanted to do. So it seems to be prod Manchester City with the stick. Obviously, I think, like you say, it does make a farce of financial fair play a little bit, this whole situation. But I think it's a bit of a farce anyway, because you've said that there could be some repercussions from this, and that's true. There is the potential for crazy spiraling wages or transfer fees or inflation like that. Maybe not now we're in the recession, but that we're in. But I know Gary Neville's a bit of a skeptic of it as well. I mean, it does seem like it's more something for the elite, like I've just said, and with UEFA trying to, you always get this feeling in the background. They're trying to push for their European Super League. I always hear reports of that in the background. However, that does seem to be quite a way away. But ideally, that is something that they would probably want, because it'd be lucrative. A lot of the big clubs would like it, because it'd keep them lucrative, it'd keep them relevant in a really big league like this. And financial fair play is almost that in light, isn't it? It's, we'll make sure you stay up there. We'll make sure no one comes down. So I wouldn't be that annoyed if it disappeared. The only downside is that, well, it's like, again, I think Gary Neville touched on it. There are other ways to prevent football owners from being ridiculous with the money and sending clubs bust. That needs to be looked at. I mean, in the lower leagues, we've seen that happen. We've seen clubs go bust. We saw Bury go bust because of poor ownership and not dealing with the finance. We've seen that happen in the lower leagues, and there needs to be, I think, more across the board, more regulations in place to stop bad owners taking over football clubs. And if people do send them into a financial meltdown, then they have to be prepared to suffer the consequences, instead of saying, "Whoa, I'm going to leave. This isn't on me. I'm going to wash my hands of it." That's too easy. I'm not convinced financial fair play really does that, though. I feel like, I don't know. I've never been a fan. a complete fan of it. I don't know what. While it does look like that topic itself, financial fair play as an idea is in jeopardy now. What are your quick fire thoughts? I'll say, because we've got about 1 minute on this.
I think there needs to be things in place to restrict reckless spending outside of a club's income. I think there need to be better regulations on club ownership, and again, like you say, punishing club owners who run their clubs into the ground. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. There should be some kind of financial support for clubs where that gets done. And yeah, so and they've got to look at it. They've got to look at reforming it, basically.
Yeah. Fantastic. Reform is the key, and that is about roughly where we are on the mark. So that's topic 1 done. Topic 2 seamlessly rolls over now. So imagine if we were doing edits, it'd be, hi, welcome to 15 minutes of football again. But I think we're doing it all together this week. But you can stay with us. So it just seamlessly rolls over. Manchester City have survived what could have been a very precarious situation. Now enter a summer transfer window, which is a bit different to the others, but they enter it with fresh optimism because they're in the Champions League. They can attract the best players. Financial fair play has been relaxed, I think, in light anyway of the recession, and basically it's almost considered irrelevant now. So,
yeah,
are we I mean, I've seen a few players that they've been linked with. Are you expecting a big sort of angry transfer surge in light of that and the fact that they've fallen so far behind Liverpool this year in the league?
I do. I absolutely do. The players they've been linked with are players in positions that they need to strengthen. The biggest, the one man that seems to keep popping out is Koulibaly, which would make a lot of sense for Manchester City. He played for Napoli, he played under Sarri at Napoli, where they played a kind of passing style of football, which Manchester City play. He is commanding. He is elite. He is like the Virgil van Dijk kind of player. He would replace Company essentially. That wouldn't surprise me at all if that happened.
And James, just to touch on that, actually, Victor Osimhen has joined or is set to join Napoli for 81 million euros.
Yes, I heard that.
And
yeah,
obviously Napoli probably can't spend the same amount as other clubs now. It'd be interesting if they had someone who could leave for a large chunk of that money.
Yes, what I've heard about Napoli is that they're going to get Omnishen and they're going to get Gabriel, centre back, who is a left centre back, which is where Koulibaly plays. So I think Koulibaly I wouldn't be surprised if Koulibaly ended up as a Manchester City player. That would be probably their club record signing, but a good signing, and it would make a huge difference to their defence for next season.
I've seen figures roughly in the higher 60s for Koulibaly, and I think even though initially the buyout clause was over 100 million, and that seemed farcical a little bit at the time, even for, I only say farcical because Virgil van Dijk cost 75 million and probably is the best in the world. So buyout clause of that did seem a little OTT, but I think high 60s. I know he's 29, but in centre back terms, that's not too bad because you can still do another 4 or 5 years probably in that period. Look at Sergio Ramos; he's smashing free kicks in from 30 yards for Real Madrid as well as defending really well. So no, I do happen to agree. I think I do. Well, actually, I'll mention it now because I'll mention it now. So the 29-year-old Koulibaly, they've kind of been linked with David Alaba. I also massively believe they should go for David Alaba. We'll talk about that in a second. But 29, Alaba would be 28. But we'll go with 29 Koulibaly. Finished product, ripe and ready, going into the Premier League. Big, strong, fast, good on the ball. Colossus at the back. Probably best defensive partnership in the league if it went with Laporte, those two.
Absolutely,
on balance. But 29 and a few other players that they're looking at. Maybe is there a sense that maybe Man City could think, right, we've probably got 1 or 2 more seasons of Guardiola left. Let's go out on a high. We've done the young players project. We've just got we've been a bit embarrassed this season by Liverpool. instead of saying, "Oh, shall we develop this youngster into the next big thing?" Obviously, they've got some fantastic youngsters who will still be developing. Do they think, that centre back position's always been a bit of an issue, even with Kompany? Remember, James, even Kompany, even though he was really, really good, he was only fit for 1 in 3 games near enough, wasn't he? If we look on balance over Guardiola's time, and that's at best. Do they think, right, experience, get the job done now, instead of trusting a youth like we've done all the way through? Because Guardiola's in the latter half of his time at City. He might have 1 or 2 seasons, maybe 3, if he can be persuaded. But I mean, I think they'll want an instant response, won't they? And they won't want, in a way, they won't want Jurgen Klopp to have, overshone their great Spaniard.
That's true. And again, every 3 or 4 years, any team needs a big refresh in terms of the squad, like first-team players coming into the squad. No matter who the manager is, you have to kind of rebuild a little bit after every 3 or 4 year period. He's been there for 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
First 2 summers they spent a lot. Last summer they didn't. Last 2 summers they haven't spent quite as much. They still spent, but not quite as much. I think this summer they're going to spend a lot. I mean, you've got David Silva leaving. Phil Foden will probably replace him in the squad. They desperately need a centre back. They want a left back. There's been Alaba has been linked. Sandro has been linked today. Ben Chilwell's another one they've been linked with. They're going to need to replace Aguero at some point because he's getting into his 30s now and he's get more injured than he used to be. So that will be one to watch, definitely. And of course they need a replacement for Sane, which the name that keeps coming up there is Torres, I think. Yeah, and he's near to the end of his contract.
More traditional winger, I think, Torres. A bit like Sané, I think he's more of a crosser than a shooter. But tell you what, I'll throw a name out there because I wrote about this recently, and he was linked with Arsenal actually. But I think Memphis Depay, 26 years old, 12 months on his contract, and the reason I say Depay is because I think there was unfinished business. He came to United, looked pretty good under Louis van Gaal. Ostracised by Jose Mourinho, really, went to Lyon, revitalised his career, has openly said that he would like to come to the Premier League and play for, a Manchester City or someone like that. And he is not only a player that can play at left wing, but also as a striker as well. So he's a very, very versatile, and I think I think he could do so. And I'm thinking more 20 million £20 which has been roughly thrown around. I think that's quite a cost-effective way of.
Yeah, he's just had a big injury, hasn't he? He's just come back from that. So I guess that's why some clubs might be a little more sceptical. But he's definitely a good player. He was doing really well for Lyon until the injury. Performing very consistently well. Showing the potential that Man United paid for when they bought him. Obviously it didn't work out, but he's showing that potential at Lyon. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. That's another option for them, although they haven't been linked with him.
It's just something as well. They don't necessarily need to directly. It wasn't like people say, "Oh, Leroy Sané will be a big loss." Andy will. He's a great player, but Sané hadn't been playing for Manchester City regularly for a long time. I mean, it was the last season when they won the league. About, I don't know, late January, early February, been phased out because we all imagine now that he probably Pep Guardiola probably became aware he was reluctant to sign a new deal, and Guardiola wants people who are ready, committed, and doesn't want to be relying on someone who isn't going to be around for a really long period of time. And then Sterling went from right wing to the left wing, and he's basically the left winger now. And on the right, you had Bernardo Silva and Riyad Mahrez. So it's not like they've not coped. In fact, he's barely featured, and they've done pretty well, really. But again, because I don't think you're going to get someone on that left-hand side who's displacing Sterling. I don't think he's one of the best wide players in the world. But when you've got someone like Memphis Depay who said, I think it was only the back end of last year, I'd love to return to England. The prospect, I'd love to play for Manchester City. It's like, it's an almost come and get me. And if you've got that enthusiasm to go there, you probably are aware that you're not going to be playing every single week because such is the competition at the club.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right. And I just love how Manchester City have gone about their squad building, because they haven't just got starters; they've got players on their bench who could be starters.
Oh, yeah.
They have, and we'll come to this later when we talk about Chelsea. But it's that when you want to compete in 4 competitions and go to the end in 4 competitions, you can't just have a good starting 11. You know, Liverpool, for example, this season have won the league at a canter.
Yeah.
But they haven't. But they got knocked out of the Champions League. They got knocked out of the domestic cups relatively early. So Manchester City won all 3 domestic competitions last year and got to the quarterfinals of the Champions League, and that's because they have this insane depth, because they want to win everything, and that's if you want to win everything, that's how you do it. And Manchester City are the example of that. And they bring in these players this summer that they're looking at. They will have that depth again. And Liverpool can't spend much this summer.
No.
They still have a very strong team, by the way, Liverpool.
Oh, yeah.
Let's be clear about that. But the title race will not be a procession next season. It will be very close. Manchester City will be a lot stronger next season. And so we'll close the gap a lot. They could even win it.
Yeah, can I just throw that other one, the other name I mentioned at you, James, actually. David Alaba, certainly someone who's played under Guardiola, thrived under Guardiola, improved a lot under Guardiola when he was at Bayern Munich, and he's openly said that. Obviously, this season at Bayern Munich, Alphonso Davies has really burst onto the scene. One of the fastest players in Europe, but not just a pace merchant. He's excellent at crossing the ball. Defensive instincts are pretty good. And he's so young, and so there's so much potential there. And he's played every week at Bayern Munich, and I think almost that you've got the sense there that having ousted David Alaba, moved Alaba to left centre back, it says everything about Alphonso Davies. But it also suggests that 12 months left on David Alaba's contract at Bayern Munich. They've got quite a few decent centre backs there: Lucas Hernandez, Jerome Boateng, and Nicolas Soule. So there is the potential. I mean, even Hansi Flick, I think, mentioned, we'll allow Alaba to do whatever he wants. We'd love to keep him, great player, but his future is up to him. At 28 as well, again, I'm talking about the ready-made product and sort of fast-tracking, as we say, some players into Manchester City's team, in light of Guardiola being in the second half of his, well into the second half of his City proposed City tenure. I can't think of many better options for Man City. Not only can he play at centre-back and probably in midfield, because he has played in midfield and plays in midfield for his country, I think sometimes, Austria, and he can play at left-back. I mean, personally, I think Benjamin Mendy's a very good player, I think he's better in a back with wing backs. I think he's more, in a system with wing backs. I think he's come back from the restart without the injuries maybe that plagued him. He's done quite well for fitness since he's been back. But to me, just doesn't quite convince me, in that Manchester City team where the little intricacies stand out a mile, and I feel like he misses the mark slightly. Not that and that doesn't mean that he's not a good player. He's a very, very good player. Could still play for Man City and look really, really good. But for me, and I think you probably agree, I think someone like Alaba coming in, who's thrived under Guardiola before, can do the little neat 1-2s, is consistent defensively, doesn't make many mistakes. That would be an upgrade.
Absolutely would. Yeah, it'd be an upgrade for most teams. I have read some comments by Alaba saying that he doesn't want to play as a left back.
It's interesting, isn't it?
That he would like to play in midfield. There was an interview a few months ago with him, and this was just his own preference. But he can play left back, centre back, defensive midfield. He's a quality player. Whoever gets him is getting a really good player who will deliver straight away, pretty much.
I think he prefers left back to centre back, but obviously I think midfield, because he plays there for his country. I do think as a midfielder, his ceiling of clubs is less. I think as a centre back, he'd be still at Bayern Munich if he felt comfortable there, wanted to keep going for at least another season or two. But then again, they've got a younger Lucas Hernandez, so they've got to throw that into the equation, and some other centre backs on the books. But then I do think if he did have a preference to play every week or most weeks in the big games and more security of the future, and he would be content in going back to a position he's thrived in, I think. I still wouldn't be surprised if he went to Man City. You heard it here, second or first.
I wouldn't be surprised either.
No. And Pep would probably stick him in midfield as well because he loves his midfielders, doesn't he, Guardiola? If he could line up with 11 midfielders on the pitch, he would line up with 11
Pep Guardiola loves players who can play in multiple positions as well. So, Alaba could probably play midfield. Would play probably in midfield at some point.
Yeah.
Because he wants to rest Rodri.
His inverted fullbacks go into the midfield, don't they? I mean, they interact with. Yeah.
That's right. So he'll be a good fit.
Top fit. No, yeah, and that sort of rounds us off on that topic. And just before we do go on, this is just a little note from me. If Claudio Bravo goes, I somehow see a free transfer for Pepe Reina being a shout as a number 2 for Manchester City. If Bravo just disappears, he's still got some legs in him.
Just one more thing, actually. Manchester City. I read today a story that Manchester City are interested in taking Yang Vertonghen on a free transfer as well.
Oh no, I don't like that.
I know. I agree with it.
No.
There was a story about that today, which was a bit confusing, really. But
I don't know if that would suit Manchester City. I don't think it'd suit Chelsea even with their defensive disaster classes at the moment. But topic 3 is basically a hone in from your point of view, actually, on the Chelsea situation at the moment. And I've got sort of a few ideas of what to ask you, but I'll start with an overview, really, in that I feel like Chelsea were doing quite well. They were in contention, really, for the top 4. They were playing largely a 4-2-3-1 kind of formation, or something a bit more flexible than what they're doing now.
Yeah.
Jorginho was playing quite often and doing quite well. Kante was playing quite often, doing quite well. Kovacic was a mainstay and doing excellently a lot, throughout that season. Now all of a sudden, after the restart, it's gone to a 4-3-3 with 2 obvious number 8s. Kovacic seems to have been, left out in the cold. Jorginho had been left out in the cold. N'Golo Kante has played a position which it probably does suit better than Jorginho, but doesn't seem to suit properly for Chelsea even. Neither of them really suit that lone number 6, I don't think. You've got Ross Barkley playing as a number 8 quite often, one of the most frustrating players I think I could ever watch. Scores a goal, misses 5 easy passes. Do you think that the 4-2-3-1 then, James, or the flexibility of that kind of, with roughly that being the main formation, do you think that was designed to get the best out of what Frank Lampard had, and now he's coming into a summer with where he can spend money? Do you think he's going, right, I'm moving to my preferred formation and I'm going to spend my way to making this formation work?
I think you absolutely nailed it. I think, obviously he had the transfer ban. He was stuck with what he had, so he had to make the most of what he had, and also had a few injuries to key players as well. Loftus-Cheek had a major injury. Hudson-Odoi had a major injury. Kante has been out a lot of this season, injured as well. So he missed more games this season than he has in the last 3 or 4 seasons combined, I think. I think that was the first half of the season. Really, was just using what he had and making the most of it. Lampard has proved that he can adapt his formation to what he has and to the opposition as well. He's played 3-4-3 and it's been effective this season. He's played 4-2-3-1, it's been effective. Now he's playing a 4-3-3 with 2 8s. And I think that is the formation he wants to play. And it's actually very reminiscent of what he played in, under the peak years at Chelsea under Jose Mourinho, in the 2004, 2005, 2006. That's basically what they played. It's very similar. And I think that's what he wants to play. And if you look at the players that Chelsea are going for, and in particular, Kai Havertz tells you a lot about how Lampard wants to play. If Kai Havertz is basically that. I mean, Kai Havertz can play attacking midfield 8. He can play on the right. he can play as a kind of false nine and be effective in all of those positions. But I think Chelsea want to buy him as an 8, and I think that's why they want him. Yeah, because they've got Mason Mount, who's done fantastically this year. They've got Loftus-Cheek, who is coming back to full fitness now, and then they'll have. And if they sign for Havertz, they'd have him as well. They'd have those 3 players going for those 2 positions, with Kovacic, who can play as a number 8 as well. So he'd be the kind of 4th choice in that position. And then you have, N'Golo Kante as the defensive midfield player. Billy Gilmore can play in the 6 as well, although he's injured right now, which I think might open a possibility for Ethan Ampadu, who can play there as a kind of backup to Kante. He's actually more of an orthodox defensive midfielder than Kante, if I'm honest. Yeah, I think you're seeing that, and I think what I heard from David Ornstein, who's a very well sourced journalist for The Athletic, said that there was a 3-year plan at Chelsea. There was the first year would be this year, building around the academy talents with the transfer ban, then have 2 big summers of investment in rebuilding the squad. And I think that will involve a defensive midfielder at some point, probably next summer, a proper one, rather than Kante, who's a world-class player, don't get me wrong, but he's not a natural defensive midfield player although he's good at it. I mean, he's good at it because he's a world-class player, but that's not his kind of specialist position. He's more of a box-to-box defensive midfield player.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So yeah, I think that's what you're starting to see, and there's going to be a lot of changes this summer at Chelsea. There'll be more next summer. There's going to be a lot of players leaving.
Yes.
You're starting comments after the Sheffield United game. I thought were very telling. To me, it sounded like he was essentially saying, "I've put up with a lot of players here that I didn't really want, and I've been playing them. But tonight, I really saw what they're really made of, and it's kind of that was the final straw for a lot of those players. Kind of had enough."
Yeah, I mean, do you think you talk about the number 8, and Kovacic, who had been Player of the Year, arguably now faces being exiled from the squad, or maybe even sold, depending on if he has any suitors. Do you think though that I touched on Ross Barkley? I think, as I say, I think he's one of those who does. He seems to score. I mean, if Ross Barkley played all season in the number 8, I bet he'd get 10, 12 goals. I really do, and get a few assists. But at the same time, I do think I watch him and I think, oh, you're not in sync with everyone else, and this, the simple 5-yard passes behind the player, or this isn't quite working. But if you look at his base stats, his finishing's excellent, either foot, just outside the box. Do you think that this system at the moment, where he's been playing quite a lot actually since the restart, do you think this means that he has a Chelsea future, as opposed to some of the other players that?
No, I don't. I think if Chelsea signed Kai Havertz, he would be the one that gets sold, and there's apparently interest from West Ham and Newcastle in him. With the Euros coming up, he's going to want to play regularly, and I don't think he will, especially even without Kai Havertz. I think Ruben Loftus-Cheek would start ahead of him when he's fully fit next season. So, I think he will end up going. Frank Lampard likes him. I mean, he said that publicly. He's got a lot of time for him, but I don't think that's going to stop Kai Havertz, who is, a high-class talent, potentially elite player. So I like Ross Barkley. I think he's got a great attitude. I think he works really hard. Apparently, he's got a good attitude in training. He always works hard when he plays. But he's one of the most frustrating players because he can score a great goal or even do a great pass, and then he'll do like 2 or 3 bad passes or a shot that goes absolutely nowhere or whatever.
But to be fair, James,
yeah,
Havertz and Mount as number 8s. Imagine they're the starting 8s probably next season. Then that's Loftus-Cheek and who? I mean, are you saying Kovacic maybe as the other 8?
Yeah, Kovacic I think will stay because he can play the number 8 or he can play the number 6.
Yeah.
So he gives you a bit of versatility.
I like Kovacic.
No, I like Kovacic as well. I think he's a good player. I think ultimately he will be sold, but not this summer. I think
do you think he's
a defensive midfield player, he will be the one that get sold to make way for that.
Do you think he's suffering by not being a lone 6 or an 8 and being like an in between?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
yes. But he's a very talented player. I mean, he's dribbling, his passing is very good. He's not. I mean, he's not in terms of stats. He's not got many goals and assists, but his performances have been excellent this season. Yeah.
We've got 5 minutes to go on one topic. What I would say beforehand is I think a front three of Ziyech, Werner, and Pulisic is sounds amazing, and I think that's sort of what it's mounting up to be now when I think about it. And even then you've got the likes of Abraham, Giroud, and Hudson-Odoi in backup, and that again that's not too bad either.
But what I've heard as well is that Chelsea want to sign Ben Rama if Willian leaves.
Oh, the Brentford player.
Yeah.
Very, very good player. Yeah.
Lampard wants to have 4. This is what I mentioned with Manchester City. Lampard wants to have 4 different options on the wing, plus Kai Havertz in midfield.
Yeah.
Because he wants that depth.
He does. Depth is important. But obviously it's looking good up top, but less so maybe at the back. And obviously a few issues. Yeah, so we've got a good... This could be a 15-minute segment in itself, but I suppose we'll leave it at 5. We'll leave it at 5. I mean, and obviously I think in future we could have 15 minutes solely on this, but we'll go for the depth, just for the general stuff. There's a lot of issues in Chelsea's defence. You're not a big fan of the goalkeeper, and he doesn't inspire lots of confidence.
No,
I think right back options aren't too bad. Reece James has lots of promise. Azpilicueta's one of the most underrated options in that position anyway. So
agree. Absolutely.
He can play. Also can play left back. But then if he's not playing left back, then Marcus Alonso is very good wing back, just an average, okay, not too bad left back, could probably improve. Emerson isn't bad. He's been linked with Antonio Conte, to be fair. But we'll avoid the full-back areas for now, and I think focus on the 2 in the centre backs and the goalkeeper. If it was up to you, would you sign a goalkeeper or a centre back? And because it could come if they go for Havertz and they look for a left back. That's there is an obvious issue
I do think they could sign both this summer, but depending on what happens with Kepa. But I mean, Kepa's save percentage is 55% this season.
It's gone up 1% since we last spoke.
That is the lowest in the Premier League. It's also the lowest by any keeper that started 12 games or more in the Premier League ever. There's absolutely... We could have had Ben Foster in goal this season, and we would have about 7 or 8 points more, at least, which we'd have been secure in Champions League already. So the goalkeeper, it doesn't matter. I mean, I think wouldn't matter if you had Virgil van Dijk and Koulibaly in front of Kepa. You would still concede goals that you shouldn't concede. Chelsea have, I think, the 4th least shots conceded of any team in the 5 European leagues. But yet we have one of the worst. They have one of the worst defences. So Kepa, getting rid of Kepa is absolute priority defensively. But Chelsea do need a centre back urgently.
So which one? Which one's more of a priority then, in your opinion?
If I had to choose between them, I would choose the goalkeeper right now. Partly because of the fact as well that it's going to be difficult to shift some of the defenders anyway. But partly because of the stats that I just shared with you. But I think that Chelsea would try and do both this summer if they can. They want Declan Rice. Declan Rice he's good in the air. He's vocal.
Good on the ball.
He's a leader. He's good on the ball. He's captaincy material. He's an excellent player. Every time I watch him, he reminds me of John Terry, and I think that's what Lampard sees in him as well. That he could be a guy who could lead and organise that defence, and he could players like Kurt Zouma would improve by playing with him. So I think and I think that will. I think Declan Rice will join Chelsea either this summer or next summer, depending on if they can get a deal done. There's talk of Ross Barkley and money. Because West Ham want Ross Barkley, so that's a possibility. It depends really, and if they don't get Declan Rice this summer, they'll get him next summer. If they don't get him this summer, they may still get a centre back this summer.
So just in summary then there, James, so you'd say I want a goalkeeper. You've mentioned Onana from Ajax before,
Yeah.
who, someone good with the feet. And I think in general, a solid commanding goalkeeper does make a two central defence in front of him look better. At the same time, I suppose, two very, very good centre-backs also make the goalkeeper
They do,
better.
yeah.
So it's an interesting one. But cost effectively, I think it probably makes sense if it, as you say, goalkeeper priority. But then just as we're in the final minute, just to touch on it, if you're saying that Declan Rice did come in, would he be the right centre back alongside Kurt Zouma? Is Zouma the one that you see as the?
I think Kurt Zouma is naturally right-footed, so I think he would.
He plays on the left though, doesn't he? For Chelsea.
Yeah, I know, but that's not his best. That's not his best side.
No.
I think that if Declan Rice joined, it would be Kurt Zouma and Declan Rice as centre back, and that would be a solid centre back partnership for me. I think Lampard has said he wants a consistent centre back partnership, but he just hasn't been able to find one which works. Yeah. So hopefully that will get sorted this summer.
Absolutely. Next time, James, we're going to win to 15. I'm well aware we could actually spend 15 on the Chelsea defence, the midfield and the attack. But I think that's a nice way to finish. Need a goalkeeper, more than a centre back. Definitely need a left back and Kai Havertz. So that would be a happy Chelsea window. Absolutely. Okay, so on to final topic, which is England goalkeepers that really came up actually at the weekend. My team Burnley playing Liverpool. A remarkable game. It's been a while since I've been as energetic as that on watching a game. It's not that it meant anything, but this is a Liverpool team chasing a home win in every single game this season, and Burnley was a team that stopped them from doing it, which I thought was quite amusing. And Nick Pope was incredible, absolutely incredible. Made some unbelievable saves, and I mean, at the end, Johan Berg Gummers had hit the crossbar. Right, I was up like this, head in my hands. But that was only made possible because of one of the best goalkeeper performances I've seen this season. Absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely, no question. Yeah, Nick Pope has been excellent this season. He has been, I think he's got the most. Is it the second most clean sheets in the Premier League, or
the most? Golden Glove contender. He's winning it.
Yeah, I thought it was either the most or the second most. Yeah, he's been superb this season. He's improved definitely.
Yeah.
I've read articles where he talks about how he's working on his game all the time and trying to improve all the time, and you can see it. He's high class. Yeah,
no, he is. I mean, have you got any queries, James? Any queries for me as the man in the goal?
Yeah, I know a lot of people talk about what a Nick Pope or just England goalkeepers generally.
Yeah, just all of it.
Okay, well, first, I suppose Nick Pope, because a lot of people talk about his distribution not being as good as it could be. And he plays for Burnley where he doesn't really need to have good distribution because of the style of football that they play. Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to it at all because it's effective. And I have a lot of time for Burnley and for Sean Dyche and how they do what they do with the budget that they have. So, but it's just that, does he have, to play for England and to play in international tournaments against top sides and the style of football that England want to play, can he, the question for Nick Pope is, can he develop the skills, distribution skills required to do that? Because there's no question he should be in the squad, but does he have the potential to be able to develop the skills to do that? And would he need to move clubs to do that?
Well, no, that's a good question. I think, I was right about this earlier in the week, and I think if the World Cup or European Championships was in 2012, 2011, 2010 even, whatever, 10 years ago, if it was 10 years ago and we had the same players available to us now, I think he'd be number one. I think he'd be England number one. I think he is, let's strip back goalkeeping. Certainly 10 years ago, what did you talk about when you talked about goalkeeping? You talked about, could they keep the ball out of the net? Could they command the box? Were they a leader? Did they inspire confidence? And he does, and he is. He's a brilliant shot stopper, as we saw against Liverpool. I think that's partly because of how big he is. He's huge. But then, at the same time, Fraser Forster was huge. And towards the end of his Southampton playing time, he wasn't necessarily inspiring confidence. But with Pope, he uses his body in the right way. He's athletic despite his size, so he's very, he can get across. He's not slow down to shots. One of the saves in particular against Liverpool, where he's diving behind the line to save, is incredible athleticism. Yep. And you don't expect that from someone so big. You think if the ball's gone past, they won't be able to move, the body frame is so huge. But he's genuinely very athletic and very quick in his dives and getting down to shots. Also, one thing that stands him out above the rest is his high claims, which is when he comes out to claim the ball and takes the pressure off the defenders. 48 times he's done that this season. And the second most in the league is Tim Krul with 27. I mean, that's a substantial difference. I mean, this is a guy who doesn't shirk responsibility. And you talk about big goalkeepers and responsibility, and the big goalkeepers, not size-wise, but the best goalkeepers are ones that don't shirk responsibility. They embrace it, they take it on. Yeah. Now, taking the game into his own hands by coming off his line and claiming the ball 48 times and taking pressure off defenders, that is taking responsibility. That's not sitting on your line. You think of small team goalkeepers, and I class Burnley as a smaller team, but you think they may have better stats because they can parry balls into the 6-yard box and the defender's going to clear it because they sit really deep, and they can keep clean sheets because 2 defenders in front are so deep they can clear all the balls with the head and they don't have to do as much in terms of coming out and claiming the ball. They can save shots, parry them out, and they'll be cleared. So you can say they're a bit misleading, but with Pope, it's not like that. I mean, he doesn't. Obviously his defenders are very good, but he doesn't rely on them all the time. It's actually the other way around. The defenders rely on him to come out 10 yards and claim the ball, to come out 15 yards and grab it, to take control of the situation. So he's not someone who shirks responsibility. I know I'm waffling a bit there, but that's what he's good at. It's shot stopping and his and the way he commands his box and his leadership in the back. Just to go on to a point I mentioned before, 2010, same players he's playing. Pope's, for me, is a victim of football's progression in the past 4 or 5 years. He's come onto the scene at the wrong time. When Pep Guardiola came into England, he got rid of Joe Hart and he brought Claudio Bravo in. And they said, why are you getting rid of a good goalkeeper? A really good shot stopper. He says he can't play with his feet. Everyone said, what are you doing? What do you mean he can't play with his feet? He's a City legend. I mean, he wasn't proven right by Bravo. He was a bit of a calamity. And obviously, the season after, he brought Ederson in and he could do the passing. I mean, Bravo was a brilliant passer of the ball. Just wasn't very good in goal, in the Premier League. And Ederson's a brilliant passer of the ball, but he's very good in goal. So it ticks both boxes. Yeah. But when he did that, when he made that big decision, he got rid of Joe Hart. People said, you're mad. Then he starts winning things. And people are going, oh, hang on, maybe the goalkeeper is an outfield player. Maybe he does contribute to the system. Maybe he is, you can pass at him. He's an option now on the field. That did exist, maybe at Barcelona. And Manuel Neuer was Europe's mainstream answer to being an outfield player, wasn't he? Even though everyone thought he was an exception. Now it's the norm. The goalkeeper must be good with the feet. He must contribute at a big club to the style of play, usually anyway. And one example I think that stands out for me is Petr Cech. When Petr Cech was at Chelsea, James, you'll know he was one of the best goalkeepers in the world. And he was a brilliant shot stopper. He was a leader, commanded his box well. But that's what he did. And you never said, oh, but could Petr Cech spray the ball 30 yards on a sixpence to a midfielder? No. But he can kick it. No one would have mentioned that. When he went to Arsenal, it didn't necessarily work out for him as well as it did at Chelsea. And when Unai Emery came in, I remember that first game of his against Man City. Petr Cech was in goal, and Emery was basically asking him to be an 11th man, be an 11th, outfield player, contribute to the play, contribute to the possession, and make yourself an option. And he tried, and he looked like, a disaster waiting to happen. Every time the ball came to his feet, this is a goalkeeper that probably under Jose Mourinho, it was knock it over halfway to the big man, or pass it out short to the defender, not just under Mourinho, but under various managers. Throw the ball out to a teammate. Do basic things with the distribution. And then under Unai Emery, it's pass the ball first time 30 yards to the right back. Play some neat 1-2s with your teammates. Come out with the ball. Look composed on the ball. It was completely different, and he looked completely lost. And so much so that Petr Cech now. That Cech of 10 years ago, playing now, I don't think would have got the same accolades, wouldn't have been in the same teams, because people would have looked at his feet, they'd have looked at the way he kicked the ball and said, can you, you're not really fitting the grade. You're not really fitting that because it's changed. The style has changed. The way we perceive football has changed.
Yeah.
And with Pope coming onto the scene, 26 years old when he played his first Premier League game, he's come in and he's got all the attributes to be a really good goalkeeper, and he's showing it week in, week out. He's better shot stopper and better at the back, better leader, better person to assure his defenders and take responsibility of crosses. He's better than Henderson, who's still a very good goalkeeper, and he's a lot better than Pickford. But the fundamental flaw in that is the goalkeeper now, as Gareth Southgate even perceives, is someone who has to contribute to the style. And Pickford can do that pretty well. When his head's in it, might I add. Sometimes when his head's not in it, he does strange things. But when his head is in it, he can contribute to it well. England v Spain, 3-2 England. Pickford was in goal, and he was brilliant. He's from a passing point of view. He did a driven pass about 45 yards up the pitch to I think it was Eric Dyer. I'm not 100% sure. I'm thinking a while back, but it was chested down. It cut out. It was really quick, so it caught Spain off guard. And from that move, 1 or 2 or 3 passes later, I think England scored. I think it was either Sterling or Rashford. And I think he did it again for one of the goals. I think he played another accurate ball out to the flanks. And again, it caught Spain off guard. And England were able to play through and score. It was a perfect example, really, of what that can do. Why Pickford's in the side. Because it does make a difference. Ederson makes a difference to Man City. It does make a difference at the top level. But it's a recent shift in attitude to a progressive attitude. I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing. Or well, it is a good thing. It makes it, it's really exciting to watch, and it's a clever tactical move. Question I ask myself, and I might as well pose this to you as well because I've talked a bit, is, Guardiola got rid of Hart because he wasn't good enough with his feet. He brought Bravo in, who was good enough with his feet. When he realised Bravo wasn't a good enough goalkeeper to be a number 1 in the Premier League, he went and bought Ederson, who was a good enough goalkeeper, and he was good with his feet. But Gareth Southgate, as England manager, has a dilemma of Pickford, who's very good with his feet. He can be a good goalkeeper, but he's flattering to deceive quite a lot at the moment. He's making a lot of errors. So in essence, I'm going to say at this moment in time, average goalkeeper, good with his feet. That's what, at this moment in time, average goalkeeper, good with his feet. You got Henderson, who's decent goalkeeper, okay with his feet, bit better than Pope. Not as good as Pickford. Pickford's very good, but he's okay with his feet, and he's a decent goalkeeper. You got Pope, who's an excellent goalkeeper, who's not very good with his feet. And you've got unlike Guardiola, he can't go into the transfer market and say, I'm going to get someone who ticks both boxes. He's got everyone. He's got Pickford, who ticks one box, his style, which is probably the most important thing, might I add, to Southgate, like it is to Guardiola and Klopp and managers and Ten Hag at Ajax.
Yeah.
And then you've got Pope, who ticks the other box in that he's, from a goalkeeping perspective, as we say, 10 years ago, he'd be lauded as one of the league's best because he's got the lot, except for his kicking and his throwing, which is not brilliant. And then you've got Henderson, who's don't really tick either box properly. He's not quite as good as Pope. He's not in terms of goalkeeping, but he's pretty good. He's not as good as Pickford with his kicking, but he's not bad. But he is young and he has time to develop his game. I think he'll go with Pickford for what it's worth. I think it's the argument, isn't it, James, whether style is more important and philosophy is more important than getting the right player on the pitch.
And it's a difficult one because of the style that England play. But the thing is, a bad goalkeeper will cost you goals. That's the thing. A bad goalkeeper will cost you goals that you would not otherwise have conceded. So there has to be an element of they need to be able to pass and distribute the ball at a basic level, even a decent level. But at a high level, you need a goalkeeper who can save shots, who can come and claim balls, and who can, who pull off great saves and be consistent.
Who would be your number 1?
It's very difficult because there's a part of me that is inclined to go for Pope because he's the best goalkeeper. But in real terms, we need a goalkeeper who can play out from the back. So, and I'm not I mean, on his day, Pickford can be excellent.
He's a World Cup hero.
On his
Let's not forget he was amazing in the 2018 World Cup.
He was superb.
Really good.
If he played like that all the time,
yeah,
he would be first choice. But he doesn't.
No.
Henderson, I think, has a lot of potential to be a really top goalkeeper.
In 30 seconds, James, who's your number one?
I'd probably look to the long term and go with Henderson and allow him to develop.
Even for 2021?
2021? God. Yeah. Well,
it will be Pickford, I think, in all honesty.
I'd probably go with Pickford until 2021, but then beyond that, I think I would go with Henderson.
Tell you what, just as a lasting line, if Sam Allardyce hadn't have been dismissed, Nick Pope would have been number one, wouldn't he? He would, wouldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Although, can I just say on record, I'm glad Gareth Southgate is England manager.
Am I?
Yeah, but yeah, no, that's a nice way to round it off anyway. So yeah, that was 4 topics, 15 minutes of football. If the editors are very, smart and clever, they will be already ahead of the game, and they'll edit it in such a good way that it was done exactly how I wrote down to Wayne, our executive producer. However, I don't hold it against them if they don't. This is just a piloted episode, but I think I like the structure, and I think it worked quite well. So from myself and from James, it's a goodbye, and hopefully we'll bring you more F-Mom, as I brand it, or 15 minutes of football. So see you later, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Mm-hmm.